Welcome to the Architect of Resilience podcast, where we explore the secrets of overcoming life's challenges and unlocking unstoppable strength through deep personal conversations and expert insights.
Today's podcast, we have Dr. Emily Splichal, is a pioneering podiatrist and human movement specialist renowned for her groundbreaking work in biomechanics and neuromuscular science. As the founder of the Evidence-Based Fitness Academy and founder of Naboso Technologies, she bridges the gap between academic research and practical application, empowering individuals to understand the intricate relationship between foot function and overall well-being. Her expertise has influenced professionals and athletes worldwide, making her a sought-after educator, speaker, and author. Her mission is to redefine foot health and its impact on human performance. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure and honor.
So, do you like salsa dancing?
Oh my God, I'm not. I'm a control freak, so I'm not the best dancer. I was
What's
also
that?
a gymnast, and gymnasts are about like solid. Look at my hollow. So like dances where you like flow, I'm like, wait. I'm supposed to be stiff and strong. So, oh man.
No.
It's pretty good therapy for me, right?
Yes, I would think so. I love that. Yeah, I've always wondered that about the gymnast and the hollowing, which is not necessarily, but is just a breakdown of the use of the diaphragm for stabilization techniques, right? And I'm always fascinated. I can't say that I'm a dancer, but I love, my wife laughs at me because if there's an amazing dancer on, popping up on, TV or YouTube or wherever, I'm just like, I will just watch. I just can't, I'm like, I just love that flow of movement. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the fluidity of movement. I do aerials. So that's my salsa is I do aerial silks and straps and things
Are
like
you
that.
serious?
Yeah.
Oh
and
my God.
Aerialists are either dancers or gymnasts, essentially. And you can always tell the difference because the gymnasts are like, look how strong I am. And then the dancers are just like, oh, like they're just, it's so funny, the difference of how we move.
Yeah. Well, I do love like the physicality of within gymnasts, but I recently watched, me and my wife and my youngest went to, the Nutcracker Ballet, and the dancers, you could just see like one of the men came out and we're driving home. My wife's like, well, what about that dancer's legs? I'm like, I know. They look so good. Like you could just tell, like they're very well physically adept, but man, the aerial silks, I just love the beauty of that and the flow. And I've tried to mimic that, like when I do like my DNS flow work, I feel like that where I'm grooving and moving through those natural positions. And yeah, much respect. I love it.
Yeah, it changed my life. It is the emotional expression and the forced presence of being in the moment because it's dangerous. Like you can die doing aerials. Like the silks are 12 to 15 feet high. So you have to be present in what you're doing. And honestly, that's why I always say that aerials is my therapy because it forces me in the moment. And honestly, that's where most anxiety or depression is, that you're either in the past or the future, and you just need to get in the moment. And that's why, to me, aerials does that.
Well, let's spend a little time. I was going to jump right into foot and neuromuscular science, but there's some beautiful things there. And so, tell me, how long have you been doing the aerial work?
Since 2015, so 8 years.
Nice. And so this therapy for you and being in the moment, I think that's a correct, like when I was chasing my big lifts, like I was going through a lot of chaos, a lot of stuff in my life. As I like left my career, I was going through a divorce. There was a lot of stuff going on. But that moment I would walk up to the bar required my absolute, like it was It was just me. It was just that. I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps right now, just like talking about it, thinking about being in those kinds of moments in your life. And I'm sitting here in my shop, right, filming, because if I don't have that time where I just like step into being in that moment, like this residual anxiety, stress, like you're just focused on like getting, like, what's the next moment? What have I got done? And it's a huge component to me to make sure that you got those times in your life. Did you discover that in the aerial work, or did you seek it to find that?
I sought it to find it. And the funny thing is, I'll kind of go into that, but you explaining your lifting, I got back into like lifting heavy weights because aerials, all body work, you actually lose a lot of muscle mass. I get very lean because it's a very specific type of strength. So I'm now back at the gym doing, very traditional like power lifts and stuff like that. And I was at the gym yesterday, totally barefoot, doing my lifts, but it's very psychologically empowering, and it forces me in that moment. Like no one talks to me at the gym because they can tell I am like in my zone, and just it's therapy to me as well. But for aerials, I was going through a domestic violence, like PTSD from just the mess of the domestic violence and stuff like that. And there was this happiness challenge that one of my friends had put on social media, and she was ironically going through cancer, and it was her way to kind of 30 days to happiness, and you post something. And I would be like, I'm happy. See, on social media, I'm happy. Let me do my right. And I would like force these things. And I was like, that shit's not making me happy. Like just me sitting here smiling is not making me happy, me pretending. So I was like, I think I need to do something that is like just me. I can teach fitness.
Yes.
I was like, maybe I'll just go heavy into yoga. And I was like, I could teach yoga at this point in my career. Like all of these things, I end up being like, well, I could just teach it. Right? So I was like, I need something new, like never exposed to. I don't know any of it. And then aerials kind of presented itself. The world presented it. I was living in New York City at that time, and it was just so new. And I was like, I'm going to be a complete novice. I'm going to be bad. I don't know anything about this. I'm strong, but I don't know anything about how to wrap the fabric. And from the first session, I was elated. It moved my soul in a way that I cannot describe. And I think it's because it was that forced presence, seeing new things that my body could learn. And then it was like learning a new language. And yeah, it forever changed my life. Of course, I got different injuries because of it also. But yeah, I love it. I love it so much. And then that led to true happiness. It actually led to true happiness without being like, I need to show the outside world that I'm happy through social media posts and things like that.
Wow, there's so much there. I want to repeat statements, but I'm going to hold off on that. But that feeling like learning a new language, and then again, like chasing something new in that process, because I think a lot of us in this industry where we have chosen to work as our passion, right? You end up taking this thing that was giving so much to you, and now it is your career, and then you're putting so much into it. And so, yeah, like trying to find some things exploring outside of that. So, yeah, absolutely love it. Now, you touched on going through some major issues in your life as it relates to stress and trauma, and I'm really interested about your mental process working through that and where you're at on the other side. I mean, there's never really an other side to anything.
Yeah, so all of that was like 2014. So it's like 10 years now, just under 10 years, that I'm far enough away from it that I feel strong related to that specific incident. However, the funny thing about life is that then there's something else. And now my brother's like dying of cancer. So I have like another thing that I'm going to have to like deal with soon. But at that time, it had I'm 43 now, so I was early 30s, where you're still kind of coming off of the 20s of like, I am immortal. I am resilient. I can do anything, right? In every aspect of your life. And then what that did, the domestic violence thing, is it showed me, and then really the panic attacks that followed it and the PTSD from it showed this mortality that changed my perspective on things. And it was a little like, well, there's got to be a bigger purpose. And, you start to question things. I give so much in my career, from education to being a doctor, to my family, to my friends. Like, everything is based off of giving. It then is a reminder of your self-therapy need, or serving yourself, being a little selfish and protecting that. But yeah, it was definitely like a living hell. Anyone who's ever had panic attacks and PTSD, and it was like a switch when the specific event happened with my ex, is that there was like a switch, and it was like a synapse in my brain changed. And I was like, he took that belief in my brain and how it processed. And then every other second of having panic attacks was like, oh, am I going to pass out? Am I okay? Like, literally every other second. That is exhausting to your brain, to be like, okay, I'm here. I would have it giving lectures in front of hundreds of people and speaking, but then somehow in the back of my mind, I would be like, okay, deep breath. Ooh, I feel it. Wait, am I going to pass out? Am I still here? Am I in the room? Am I here? And I'm like delivering the speech at the exact same time as that happening in the background. And I'm just like, that is so fucking exhausting. And I'm in like a prison. That having that given to me from that experience was like, that's the part that I would be like, not fuck you for hitting me, but fuck you for taking away the peace that I had in my head of like every day or every second questioning, am I okay? Am I safe? Am I going to pass out? Am I going to die? Am I going to, now I'm so far past that because of work, and Aerials was a huge part of that. But yeah, it was definitely, it shapes you in a way that I feel that was a purpose and a gift that now I try to empower other people to explore mental health. I'm a very different doctor. I listen to my patients in a different way. I have a new level of empathy for my patients and for just humanity because of that.
I love looking at that as there was a purpose and a gift to it. And there's people listening to this and they're like, you don't know, I've been through trauma. Like, I'm not disregarding anything that experiences that people have lived. But the thing is, life comes at us. And you look at Dr. Emily's, like the bio I read at the front, like her achievement, she was in this, achieving that while this is going on. It comes at everyone. It doesn't matter what place you're at life. Things are going to come at you. And you don't have control over it. And so the ability to go, how can I still use this to leverage to become better, to better for myself and better for those around me, is a really critical lesson that we all need to take a look at. And it doesn't mean disregarding and saying it didn't have an impact on me, but let's grab what piece of good impact we can have from that and give that back out and give it to ourselves. I mean, this is the essence of resilience. And the architect of resilience sign behind me right here is to be able to use all of those things. And yeah, some shit's going to hurt you. Like Dr. Emily, doing the aerials and getting a new set of injuries as it relates to that. Like, when you're embarking on things, you're going to encounter that. And it's a matter of like, okay, now where are those deficits? Where am I going to go from there to address that so that I can become more resilient and that it doesn't break me down, that I'm getting stronger from that. So thank you so much for your openness with sharing those stories. That I know is probably something that takes a lot of work just in itself, because this is stuff that people want to package up and have shame or guilt or these other emotions around these experiences. And it's not easy. I know I experienced that when I was like writing my memoir, and some of the stuff that I had to share in the course of that was challenging to get to the place of being able to share that. But again, trying to turn that around now to be something that's positive.
Yeah, I think it also brings a little bit of a relatability. Like, every human being has experienced some level of trauma or adversity. Let's just say adversity, because it doesn't have to be trauma. It doesn't have to be physical, emotional, substance in any form, but everyone goes through stuff. And it's what makes us relatable and humanizes the other person. I think sometimes when people think of, okay, I see Dr. Emily on the stage or writing or TV or whatever it is, that there's a separation of them to the other person. And I want it to
and you think that person isn't going through or doesn't have to deal with some of those things that you're dealing with, or if I just didn't have what I was dealing with, I could. And it's like, we're all human beings. Mm-hmm. Don't put anybody on a pedestal expecting that they're not going through hardships and things in their life and struggles. Like, we're all human beings.
Yep. We all bleed the same blood.
Yep. So let's change topics. I really enjoyed this conversation so far, but your work is centered around foot health and neuromuscular science. What inspired you to specialize in this unique field?
So yes, as a podiatrist, which is a foot specialist, I did not wake up one day wanting to be a podiatrist. I was an athlete for years. I was a competitive gymnast. Then I got into cycling, then into fitness. And funny kind of roundabout way to get into podiatry is I was working as a trainer and in fitness teaching classes, and I kept getting hurt. And I think it was because I was coming off of being a gymnast for so many years, and gymnastics just beats your body up that most people retire.
I have so much respect for gymnasts. I mean, that is a brutally hard sport.
Oh yeah.
I did an iron cross once.
What was that?
I did an iron cross once at 250 pounds for
that's
like
impressive.
A second and a half, and then two heads of the sternal and clavicular head of my pec detached off of my arm. But
just another day at the gym.
That's my experience.
It is a brutal sport. So, by 18, I was kind of done with like challenging my body. But anyway, I thought I was going to get into group exercise teaching, kept getting hurt. And I was like, there's not longevity in this career, or in a career that I use my body as the tool to make money. So I was like, let me use my brain. So I wanted to look at graduate school, medical schools, physical therapy, things like that. I was living in New York City at the time. New York City is another moment in my life, one of those pivots that your soul is changed. And when I moved to New York was one of those. I just felt that I was where I needed to be in the world. So I was like, okay, I can go to graduate school. I want to go to graduate school, but I cannot leave New York City because my soul is here right now. So podiatry was there. So I went to podiatry school. And as I went through it, starting to see feet and cutting toenails, I was like, what am I doing with my career? So I tried to see how I could apply movement, fitness, athletics to it the entire time. As I was going through podiatry school, I stayed within fitness. A lot of the forward thinkers within fitness, I think it's just my personality kind of challenged things a little bit. And it wasn't completing the whole story for me. I was like, but the foot is connected to the body. Why are we not learning about the rest of the body? So when I was in residency, my first year of residency, I was like, I can't do this. It's conflicting with my internal beliefs now that I quit residency. I do not suggest this to anyone because I had just spent $250,000 in student loans, and I quit
bad career advice. Yep.
residency. And I went back to school and I got my master's in human movement. And my master's in human movement was the glue or the aha between fitness, feet, and I was like, I don't know how to bridge them yet. Like, I don't have the intellect or the skill, the knowledge to connect them. My master's in human movement was essentially that. That was also the time of the barefoot running boom, 2008-9, like around there. So it was just like everything was kind of aligning at that moment. Long story short, I went back to residency so I could get licensed. I'm trained as a surgeon. I don't do surgery anymore, but I'm a licensed podiatrist. So I completed the training, and then I focused on functional podiatry, sensory science, and really founded Naboso.
That's awesome. So what are some of the common misconceptions people have about foot health and its significance?
I think a lot of people think about feet purely from a biomechanical perspective. So they think high arches, low arches, ankle movement, bunion, like it's very joint mechanical based. Orthotics. They think supportive shoes, arch supports, things like that. And that's honestly because of what mass media, podiatry is based off of this. But really, there is so much more that the foot provides. There's 26 small muscles in the bottom of the foot. There's thousands of nerves. There's fascial lines that connect your foot up the lower leg into the pelvic floor. There's inherent muscle synergies between the big toe and your posterior pelvic floor. So there's this powerful information that comes through the foot. And to think of it just as this mechanical structure means that you're overlooking all these other powerful influences.
Yeah, I'm jamming on that. I'm not sure how many people can really connect to those things, but for me, I'm thinking about like when I'm doing some soft tissue work, I may be capturing the fascial line at the hip, opening and reaching with my arm. At the same time, I'm actually moving my foot to manipulate this fascial line all the way through, or again, doing some work inside my hip socket, and I'll be manipulating my foot to have impacts on that. And the impact, it's so like, we'll coach people and they'll be having deficits, and it's like, hey, put a little pressure right here on your foot, and all of a sudden something disappears. I'm like, how does that happen? And again, people are looking at those very small aspects of, the foot. And so I still think that there's massive misconceptions around this whole even really basic fundamental high arch, low arch thing. I mean, anytime I put something up, people are like, well, in regards to minimalist shoes, strengthening the foot, it's like, well, what do I do if I have low arches? And it's like, that's not a diagnosis. Like,
Yeah.
So
I think that there's this gross misunderstanding of foot types, that all flat feet are the same, that if you have flat feet, therefore you can't do X, Y, or Z. On the flip side, you could say that some people think that they can strengthen their feet, but they have a very specific flat foot type that actually cannot be strengthened. So it does kind of go both ways. My favorite part of the foot function that I'm focusing on a lot lately is really into your toes. And if we even just forgot about the arch, high arch, low arch, doesn't matter right now. We can talk about it if you want, but really the power of your digits. And if you can activate the toes when you are balancing, when you're doing certain lifts, like when I was doing my deadlifts yesterday, I'm just like, what are these shoes? Like I literally cannot wear my shoes. And when I'm doing the deadlifts, the entire time I'm like, holy crap, my feet are like so suctioned onto the floor for those 10 reps or whatever, that I am just like, oh my gosh, I am just like on there. And if I put my shoes back on, there's a complete disconnect or a power leak, right? Like I'm just not accessing the entire stabilization system. I can't get into my pelvic floor the same way. So just that aspect of foot function alone should be something that the listeners should explore. And then that gives you a deep appreciation for the foot just by understanding the toes.
Yeah. Yeah, anybody that wants to see that, you can watch any of my videos of my big deadlifts and squats, and you'll see I'm completely, shoeless, and you will see the active foot. So I would be someone would consider low arches, but you will not see that in the lift. You'll see what Emily's talking about here with this really active foot grabbing the ground in all these movements. But it was funny, like 10 years ago when I was doing this stuff, people would be like, oh my God, he's doing it and he's barefoot. And I'm like, they're missing the point. That's actually a performance enhancer and not the other way around. But
Right.
that tide has been shifting pretty significantly. So,
Yeah.
so what impact do you see, or what is your view on how does strength and health of your feet impact your overall physical resilience and performance?
So as I already mentioned, there's 26 muscles in the bottom of the foot. Those are called intrinsics. You have 2 on the top, but the ones on the bottom are connected through fascia, connective tissue to your pelvic floor. And then from your pelvic floor, it goes into the diaphragm. It comes up your neck and to your tongue. So there's this powerful connection of the small muscles in the bottom of the foot to your center of gravity and how you stabilize your pelvis and your rib cage. Same. So being able to access and connect this foot to core or toe to tongue pathway affects standing posture, so static posture, balance, meaning dynamic balance. That could be reducing fall risk. That could be performance. That could be vertical jump. That could be in lifts. So there's performance and functional and movement longevity benefits that come from understanding your foot, accessing your foot, again, into my toes that I'm obsessed with now. The toes pushing down is technically what accesses this foot to core stabilization pathway. Oftentimes, people will think about core hip stability and they'll go into their glutes. So they want to access their glutes. But I often say that your glutes are only as strong as your core is stable, and your core is only as stable as your feet are strong. So you have to understand this powerful connection between your contact point with the ground and your center of gravity or your center of mass.
So what are some practical approaches to learning to access that? So you mentioned like pressing down with the toes. I know that I may have people do towel grabs, where they're like grabbing a towel and rolling it up, pressing a toe down, raising the others back and forth. What are some approaches that someone should be able to, one, assess if they need to spend some time with it? 2, then how do I actually, do some work on it?
Sure. So one of the exercises that you did not mention to help people feel what toe activation feels like is called a forward lean. Now, before I do any exercise, whether it's any of the ones that you mentioned or this forward lean, I first teach someone how to set their base. Now, a stable base is built off of the foot tripod. So first met head, fifth met head, heel. Your toes are long, straight, and flat. So you want to lift them up, spread them as wide as you can, place them back down onto the ground. Do a slight external rotation into your hip. So when you externally rotate, kind of like when you squeeze your butt, it forces an external rotation at the femoral head. So you slightly externally rotate. You should see the arch lift a little bit. And then the final one is toe purchase. So that means toes in the ground. So that's your stable base. So set your base. Then to do the rest of forward lean, you would stand nice and tall with your arms by your side. Imagine that you're as stiff as a board. Stay as stiff as you can, stiff as a board, and then just slightly lean your body weight forward. So you're pitching forward like this. Think like a ski jumper. You're kind of visualizing that. So you're leaning forward and then go back into a vertical position. Slight lean, back into a vertical position. And when someone does this, even without understanding muscles and fascia and feet, any of that, what they'll feel is that every time they slightly lean forward, their toes engage into the ground. And that toe flexion or toe anchoring, kind of how I think of it. Toe anchoring is a postural reflex. This is inherent within your nervous system. And if your center of gravity passes too far forward, it is a muscular reflex, neuromuscular reflex, so you don't fall over. So that action, that sensation is what you want when you do doming, active foot, short foot, call it what you want. Toes are down when you were doing your lifts, and I was doing my deadlifts yesterday. I was essentially anchoring my digits like what reflexively happens when I lean forward. I was just activating it, right? So that is the first step. Then anytime I teach foot activation, you always want to think about your breath. So where would the breath occur within this? Well, you want the exhale, which is the lifting of your diaphragm, to parallel your toes going down. So when your toes go down, your arch lifts. So think arch lifting, diaphragm lifting. You essentially want the arches or the domes in your body to stack, and that's how you stabilize your center of mass. So toes down, arch up. Technically, when you exhale, your pelvic floor lifts. So your pelvic floor dome lifted, your diaphragm lifted, and then you can also do your tongue to your palate, and you can think of that as like a dome. So arch, pelvic floor, diaphragm, palate are stacked. In yoga, they call these bandhas. So when you do postural balance exercises in yoga, you would stack your bandhas. If you don't go through the yoga method, you would stack your domes. If that is still way too much, then just think every time you push your foot down, exhale, and you are good.
Nice. I love that. As you're doing that, I'm practicing my diaphragmatic breathing with my toe movements and my feet, just feeling how it feels. And I can feel the natural flow through my body, taking that diaphragmatic breathing approach with that. And then obviously, I teach a lot of people as it relates to neck and tongue position, because that's cued into diaphragm stabilization. And it's fascinating. And just how much you can tap on the neuromuscular side. Like I'll use myself as an example again, when you see those phenomenal lifts, it's not about necessarily always getting more muscle. It's how can I create more neural drive through all the tissue with what I have and be more efficient. And at the same time, you're reducing energy links and potentially, you're enhancing your performance, but also reducing some level of risk factors when we've got, a poor level of activation in certain areas. But the depth of things is definitely really interesting. So I really love the practical giveaways, and I just said it felt really good practicing that with the breathing and tongue movements. So
yeah, when I teach foot to core and toe to tongue, short foot, all these different techniques, it's really based off of people learning to move fascially, people stabilizing fascially. You could say this is the Tensity Model. Like there's a different sensation in the body when you think of movement led through your myofascial system versus isolated muscle contraction, which I think this would be quite interesting with your background, which is very based off of like muscle, right? This is probably how you were initially taught, is a lot of lifts and strength is muscle. People who are into muscle definition, they think muscle, right? Heavy lifts. That's where I think the gymnastics, obviously I did not appreciate that when I was 12 and 13 years old, but it's entirely a fascial-based sport and a tensegrity-based sport. And if I engage my pinky finger a little bit more, or my big toe, or my posterior pelvic floor, or just tension another part of my body, and I feel tensegrity through every inch of my being, I am so much stronger. And then the next layer on top of that is, can the listeners do that and stay relaxed? That is where, because gymnastics is still, it's a sport, but you're performing. It has to look elegant. It has to look easy, right? Think Cirque du Soleil. That has to look easy to the audience, right? And that's what one of my circus instructors always said, is that art is define what you think the mind can do. And that's what movement art is. So can you always do that with a level of elegance and grace and ease? And so you're always keeping this part super relaxed. Just another layer to think about.
Yeah, for sure. My background has definitely really heavily influenced the Prague School of Medicine and their DNS. I know most of the instructors, and but I'm wondering, have you had any experience with the Eldoa work from Guy Voyer?
So I haven't gone through the program. I am familiar with it. A lot of people who do Eldoa do my trainings, and then they blend them. Similar with DNS. So a lot of DNS practitioners will go through then my BTS because it just adds just a little bit layer. I'm speaking a similar language. I speak a complementary language, and they can just fit it in very well. But I am familiar with those methods.
Yeah. So let's talk about the neurological impact with the foot, because there's so many nerve endings and so much that is involved with, let's say, the word proprioception, I think, gets misused quite a bit. But let's dive a little there.
I love this topic. So you knew that I was going to love going to this. So the skin in the bottom of the feet is very, very important to how we maintain balance, posture, movement. It is reading every step that we take and reacting and correcting to every step so that your movements, even if you're just walking across a room, is a very dynamic, always constantly changing process within your subconscious nervous system to make sure that you move the most efficiently. Your nervous system is built around being efficient because from a survival perspective, we need to be efficient in the most functional movement we do every day, which is walking. And a lot of that is based off of the powerful sensory side of the bottom of the foot, which is the same as the hand. So there's special nerves that are called touch nerves. These are actually called mechanoceptors, which is a little bit different than proprioceptors. Both mechanoceptors are touch nerves, and proprioceptors, which is more like joints, fall under exteroception or somatosensation, which is how you control your movement. The mechanoceptors in the bottom of the foot and the palm of the hand, there's 4 main ones. So when you're thinking of how do I get the most out of the sensory side of my foot, you really want to think of these 4 nerves and the different stimuli that they're sensitive to. The first one is sensitive to texture, but it's really not texture, even though we call it texture at Naboso. It is 2-point discrimination. 2-point discrimination would be like Braille. So when we have any of the Naboso products, or if you look at an ATM and let's say I push on something, I have one of our foot wedges, and on the film you can see there's little dots, but imagine like pushing your fingers on Braille to the people who are listening. And the ability to sense the difference between those 2 points is what stimulates that nerve. So Braille is designed very specifically. It's not an arbitrary height and distance between the Braille dots. Second one is skin stretch. So that's very important. There's horizontal shear when you stand and when you walk, and that stimulates these nerves. And then third and the fourth one are both sensitive to vibration. And vibration is one of the most important stimuli that you can experience in your day, in your movement. Impact forces are vibration. That's how you perceive the ground and ground reaction forces. So that's where vibration is critical. Vibration builds bone density. Vibration stimulates your postural reflexes. So it's a lot of information that's coming in. So again, you want to think 2-point discrimination, texture, skin stretch, vibration. Those are the 3, and there's 4 nerves, but 3 stimuli that is coming in to support your foot from a sensory perspective.
Let's dive into the world of optimizing your overall health. With pushing my physical limits, I encountered significant reductions in my health, and I reached out to MER Health as the premier telehealth service. I loved their personalized health coaching from the comfort of my home. They empower you with the choice of self-service diagnostic labs or what I chose, the guided optimization, with expert interpretations of blood work, health coaching, with medications delivered to my door. MER Health is your partner in optimizing your health. Listeners can receive a fantastic 10% discount off their first blood work with code RESILIENCE at merrickhealth.com. That's code RESILIENCE for 10% off your first blood work at merrickhealth.com. Discover the future of health today.
I think I've got some questions related to the vestibular system here in a minute, but let's talk about the Naboso insoles and how those are designed to, impact those systems.
Absolutely. So I'm going to show, and then I'll explain it. I have our Neuro Insole here, and you can see there's tiny little pyramids, which again, if you push down on it, it'll make the little indents, which is mimicking kind of the braille. The dots, or the pyramids, are a very specific height, shape, and distance. This is stimulating that 2-point discrimination nerve, and they are acting like purely a sensory layer. So that layer, they're flexible, they can be easily cut, they can go into any shoe, they can go on an arch support. It is stimulating this nerve to build foot awareness. Where is your posture? How is your arch sitting just passively in your foot? It stimulates the muscles because sensory stimulation stimulates muscles. And then because of that, it can improve balance and it can even support microcirculation and recovery.
So let's talk, actually, hold on. I got to take my shoe off here a second. Whoop. Good break. All right, there's my shoe.
There you go.
So the microstimulation is, there's some really great research pieces that have come out in the last few years about this plantar fasciitis, right? And essentially, I think it's 95-ish% of diagnosed plantar fasciitis cases, I can say, are not plantar fasciitis. We could argue the semantics of it, but plantar fasciitis is typically an inflammation from an overuse, right? And I'm arguing that it's not, because that is literally what they're finding with nearly most cases. It's not inflammation and overuse. It's underuse. So it's atrophy of muscles, lack of blood flow, right? And then, yes, you get some degeneration of the tendons and ligaments, but that is, again, due to this lack of use and those other impacts. So this, like, anything that you can do to improve the blood flow within the foot is just super important over time. And, obviously the big toe is well researched at pulling that in. It's just restricting we take our foot here, and if we take this and just go like this, like a traditional shoe, you're cutting off the blood flow's ability through here, but you still have all this micro. And I put on my Nabosos 2 years ago. I think maybe it was longer ago, the first time I put them on, and instantly I'm like, this feels great. So anyway, I just have to hit that. So, and our barefoot shoes, we've got that wide toe box, but when we talk about blood flow and movement, and I believe this is a big miss with a lot of minimalist shoes out there, is they have this wrap around the edge still, which limits the ability to really be able to create, just like your deadlift, like how can I actually get as much of a real interface to the ground and movement as if my foot was natural. And then I said this paired with the Naboso, just a really tremendous value proposition. But I just want to hit on that. I think there's more important pieces within what you hit as far as the neurological implications, but the research on the plantar fasciitis stuff, because they're going in, this is the research that you can read is on the imaging, but I've also talked to a number of docs that are doing biopsies, and they're seeing the exact same thing now.
Yep.
Which just, to me, is just like, when I started preaching this stuff 10 years ago, maybe it's more than 10 years ago now, people are like, where's the science? Where's the science? I'm like, where's the science that arch supports and restrictive shoes are effective? Because pretty clearly you can look at the analysis of the data and see that it doesn't provide any long term. And basic physiology concepts like, what is it? Don't use it, you lose it. I mean, let's just fucking simplify this shit. I know it's argue with me on this. And now we're starting to see the research come out to validate these really basic, oh my God, the foot is like the rest of the body. Oh, imagine that. You got the same concepts apply. It's not some secret different. And we don't have these magically engineered, perfect, Nike shoes that are super scientific. Like, no, it's fucking not.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hear you. Like, amen.
Sorry, I'm on a rant. I got animated.
That's what you say, mic drop, right? You're good. But yes, so the circulation with plantar fasciitis, that's like one of the biggest ones. And texture, so you had referenced the Naboso insoles that you use in combination with barefoot shoes, can increase microcirculation, which is great. Vibration stimulates microcirculation. So what's nice about your shoes is that there's not lots of cushion that is taking away the vibration. So moving in barefoot shoes allows you to feel the vibration, which then stimulates the microcirculation. Add a Naboso, that's a win. Movement in itself. So research has shown after just 50 steps, you have increased microcirculation to your foot. A lot of circulation is assessed through skin temperature and muscle temperature is how they will gauge it. So those are absolutely ways that I definitely suggest it. And this is there's a really interesting study that compared whole body vibration with hot water. So just put your feet in hot water. Does that increase your foot temperature? And then the other was cycling. So it was like a non-impact based form but it was movement. And by far the fastest was they were using a vibration platform. It was 10 minutes just vibrating your feet, increased the foot microcirculation the greatest, which I think is awesome.
Tell me, who doesn't enjoy a foot massage? It feels so good. It's right, stimulating blood flow, lymphatic drainage. We're getting the muscles manipulated and moved. Now it's passive, which isn't as good as active, what we're talking about here. But that's just a clear indicator, like it's packaged up and needs some freaking health.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And a lot of the misconceptions that are out there about feet and shoes are because of footwear companies, which I know which they're just a business. Yep. I'm a business owner, so I get it. I want to make money by selling products.
Well, and I think there was a lot of just misinformation. I think people are not genuinely trying to do, bad things. So if we look at the history of Nike, I mean, they were on the running craze, right? So Born to Run, I think, came out and they're creating this. And what do? Well, I believe it was a podiatrist that they consulted, but like, what are we going to do? People are going to have a lot of calf issues because they've been walking around in dress shoes, elevated heels, so on. They go to run. Like, what are we going to do? Well, that's educating the market really wasn't in the medium at that point in time. So the suggestion was put a heel in your running shoe to accommodate that. Well, now we've got a raised heel, so we've got an overstride. What happens with overstride? We've got to pull the toe. Well, as we do that, now that big toe is pulled in. Well, now we don't have ability to control and actively control the foot, so we have to package a big arch support in there. And so they're trying to create fixes and packaging one fix on top of another instead of fixing a root issue, which dives all the way back to people riding horses, right? And having to have stirrups. And you've got that raised heel and a stirrup, which then rolled into fashion and so on. And now here we are in 2024. And we've still got residual of stuff from hundreds of years ago impacting us.
Yep. It's amazing how reactions to reactions, which is why I like in everything I do, especially medically, when I see a patient, I'm like, don't even tell me what anyone else has diagnosed you with before. I do not want bias. Like, bias is inherent to being human, is we are biased in our decisions. That oftentimes it's actually better for me not to even look at like an intake form where a patient comes in and says, my complaint is I have plantar fasciitis. And then I'm just going to see plantar fasciitis. And I remember this early in my career and just be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I had to like take a step back in some patients that were not responding and then saying like, how could I have missed that? Because it was just inherent for me to kind of tunnel in what I was hearing. And that's a good lesson for really everything.
I think, you know, a lot of the listeners are people that work with clients. And so, you know, always pushing back to this, like, make sure that you're doing the investigative work, be the investigative scientist. And that's something I really try to drive home, is doing that work to really understand those drivers and take a fresh look at it. And it's going to require a level of education, which is probably why you're listening to the podcast, but is to continue to open your mind to the influence, because nobody has all the answers. You've pulled from multiple disciplines. I have. But let's tie this back to Naboso, and I'd love to hear some success stories and feedback from users that, you know, some tangible impacts that have been had for individuals, athletes.
Yeah, so I would say some of the most profound impact that we've had with our insoles and socks, so primarily those because people are walking with those on, is primarily within the chronic neurological space. So neuropathies, MS, Parkinson's, stroke, spinal cord injury, a lot within that space that we have before and after videos, like immediate before and after videos, walk without, put them in, walk again. And people with Parkinson's are running. People who were using a cane are walking the road of the cane. And it really looks like a kind of a snake oil thing. It's not snake oil, I promise. But it's this profound change that is just the power of actually feeling where your feet are in space. And what does that do to the rest of the nervous system? What does that do to your autonomic nervous system? And it could easily pull you out of fight or flight because you're not scared that you're going to fall. So those are some of the most profound. And those, we have videos of authentic, genuine responses of the individuals experiencing it for the first time, and they're like crying, and that they like, it's powerful. We have feedback of, we did a neuropathy pilot a couple years ago with 40 people with different types of neuropathy. And then they would just wear them every day and then give feedbacks 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks later. It was subjective, but one of the women in particular, she happened to have an MS related neuropathy. She gave this timeline of, you know, her now being able to, she feels her feet and she hasn't felt her feet in 10 years. Now she can go up the stairs and, you know, has this new level of independence. So these powerful changes. In the non-chronic neurological side, the response that people have using our NeuroBall for plantar fasciitis, like that's a huge one that goes towards that circulation side of it. We have many professional athletes who swear by it. One that uses it a lot is baseball pitchers. And it makes sense because they need to feel their foot as they are throwing the ball. We work with a lot of golfers where the golfer feels that they have this heightened sense of weight shift during the golf swing. Children's another one. We have children on the spectrum who will use our sensory stick. They'll just hold the stick, and the combination of the weight with the texture calms their nervous system, and they can study and they can focus when they're learning. So it's really profound, the changes that we see.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those stories. I love the comment with the professional baseball players, because, you know, every single baseball team out there uses the transformer bar, by the way. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
That's okay.
Now, well, it's a nice stat. something to be proud of. Now, you mentioned the autonomic nervous system, and this is an area that really fascinates me with some of the other things that you've brought up so far. So, with the tongue, the diaphragm, so on. And I'm just thinking about like the phrenic nerve that, innervates the diaphragm, but it also, pierces the pericardium, which is, tied to our heart. And, we've got the vagal nerve in there, but a lot of this stuff is, I'm just familiar with like this tightness and restriction around these areas. I've seen that in a lot of like really heavy lifters. We see a lot of cervical spine issues, and these are just my hypothesis because they're not putting severe loads on that area. But when you start creating that periocardial ligament, it's got massive attachments into the cervical spine, and I could definitely just see how that tears into place. But the phrenic nerve and the vagal nerve and the impact on the diaphragm, and then you were talking about those being involved with the foot. Like, do you have any interesting, things to share from that related to that and the foot, or just anywhere and all related to the neurology?
Yeah, so I love talking about calming the autonomic nervous system and fight or flight, safety. It's a big area of, I think, longevity. Maybe post-COVID, it became a little bit more just because people are into this like self-empowerment of their health, which includes mental health and stress levels and things like that. The foot and feeling grounded, feeling anchored from a sensory perspective is very calming to the nervous system. I do have many craniosacral therapists that will use Naboso, and I've seen some actually using it in practice, and that as they're resetting the cranial nerves and just helping a individual release certain things, if they see a triggering of the sympathetic response, they'll be holding something. I don't have a narrow ball. Oh my gosh. They'll be holding something, and then they'll say, okay, feel the texture in your hands, feel the texture under your feet. You are safe. Say that with me. Like, I am safe. I am here. I feel my feet. I am grounded. So they're using Naboso as a way to access the perception of safety and awareness on the earth, right? And that's what's powerful, and that can be powerful. Let's say if someone had neuropathy, but you don't have to have neuropathy to benefit for that. That is beneficial. The foot massage that you mentioned earlier actually influences the autonomic nervous system as well. And getting a foot massage is one of the best ways, meaning you could do the neural ball release if you want, or go get a foot massage. I totally give you permission to do that as well. Is that it'll bring you back down into a safety perspective. When I do a lot of work with fall reduction and even athletic performance, there's this space that's called interoception, which is your perception of your internal environment. That is your breath. That is your intuition. It is flushing. It's your heart beating. Like, all these things are interoception. Your awareness of your internal environment is very much connected to your awareness of your external environment. So I will use things like compression apparel, dry brushing, obviously Naboso, wrist weights, weighted vests, and I'll use them to build the awareness of the proprioceptive mechanoceptive system, that they feel their physical body in space. And as they do that, then they're connecting to their internal environment, which is the breath, the heart beating, and they're kind of bridging both of these, which is calming to the autonomic nervous system. Most people, when you start to get elevated, and even when I was explaining my domestic violence story, I could tell that my nervous system was getting a little bit elevated, that I was starting to have a floating sensation. So I knew that I've Naboso flooring in my office. So I knew that a way to like re-anchor me, like get me back here was, I'm like just wiggling my toes, or I'm like grabbing the here, like something you can pinch yourself, you can just make a fist, you can contract your muscles, things that reconnect to your perception of self and where you are in space, which is your body schema, is very powerful.
Awesome. I love it. Well, I've got one last question for you since we're running up on the end of this. Although our listeners, there will be an assignment based off of this for our Endless Evolution community. So obviously join the Endless Evolution community if you want to have access to that. But what are your non-negotiables as it relates to strength and fitness at this point in your life or career?
That is going to be my sleep. Is it non-negotiable? I must get 8 to 9 hours of sleep every day. I do my daily foot recovery and believe that there has to be some sort of reset on that. My non-negotiable is that I also lift 3 times a week, and that is me, myself, specific music that is forcing me into the present moment. And then my non-negotiable as of late is dramatic reduction of alcohol, because I just keep being encountered by research and data and conversation of the carcinogenic effects of alcohol. And I'm very sensitive to that. So that
me and my wife cut that out this last year. Just like just keeps like it's poison. So.
Yeah. And when the world keeps kind of demonstrating that to you, sometimes it takes a while for you to notice it, that the world is telling you that. But that is definitely one that the world is keep telling me. So I'm like, it's time to listen to the world.
So where can people find you at? Naboso, yourself, so on. What's the best places to go look for you? Web, social?
Yep.
What do you want to drop out there?
So on social, my handle is DrEmilyDPM. That would be Instagram social. My medical practice is dremilysplichal.com. So it's just my name. That I do see virtual patients. I also link out to a YouTube channel that is very educational based. And then Naboso, which is all of the textured products that we spoke about. Their Instagram is naboso_technology. And then the website is naboso.com, naboso.com. And then they can also get it on the Barefoot Shoes site.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this really enlightening discussion today. Had an absolute fantastic time.
I did as well. Thank you for having me on.
Raising my hands for my video guy to find where the edit's at. All right. So Dr. Emily, I'd love to have you provide an assignment based off of some of the topics that we've talked about for those members of our Endless Evolution community that they can take a tackle on, maybe journal, that they're going to talk back and report to each other on their experiences with. What would that be?
Absolutely. So this assignment is going to be about connecting to your feet for 5 minutes. First thing in the morning. And you can do this when you brush your teeth. So I'm going to have you release your feet just for a couple minutes. You could use a Neuro ball, a lacrosse ball, a tennis ball, anything right now. And just release the feet for a couple minutes brushing your teeth. What I want you to do after you do that to both feet is then stand with your feet shoulder width apart. Set your base like we did in the episode. Slightly externally rotate. You'll do 5 to 8 forward leans. So you're activating your toes. Then I want you to push your toes down on one foot first, shift, and you're going to balance for 10 seconds. Reset your base, both feet. Do the other side, balance for 10 seconds, and you'll do that 3 times. So you are releasing the feet, setting your base, doing 5 to 8 forward leans. Remember to exhale when you lean forward. And then you're going to balance 10 seconds per foot 3 times every single day in the morning.
Awesome. I can't wait to try that myself. So looking forward to this. I love feet, but this is a really practical, great way, and love to hear everybody's experiences on this.